So this interview is with the TV composer Sam Watts, and they have actually worked on like so many big, interesting, cool shows to the point where I have written down quite a sizable amount of credits that I want to read out because I don't want to miss any like big important shows that I want to mention in this introduction. So let me read them for you now. We have Russell T Davies's new drama Tiptoe, The Traitors, Planet Earth, Doctor Who, Tales of the TARDIS, The Sarah Jane Adventures, Wizards vs. Aliens. Like, it's so impressive to have that list of credits. It's really impressive. So I feel so privileged and so blessed to have been able to have this conversation, to be able to talk about having a career as a TV composer and all about the industry and the process of writing music for TV and like writing music for non-fiction shows, documentaries, that kind of thing, and also for more fictional shows and telling a story through music with TV and all that. Like, we go into so many different conversations about different parts of the process, and I found it so interesting to be able to talk to someone who's so experienced and so impressive in this field. So I'll stop chatting about what actually happens and leave you to watch the interview for yourself. So the first thing I wanted to ask you about, based on my research of you, which sounds terrifying actually, is about your cold emailing, because I know that you contacted a guest lecturer and managed to get your first job that way.
Well, actually, that was it was a very long time ago because I'm very old, and that was a composer called George Fenton who um, came to my university to guest lecture, and my tutor was actually kind enough with that one to um, sort of put in a good word, and I got
Yeah.
to talk to him for a few minutes, and then I did my dissertation on him, and then I just badgered him a lot, like a really embarrassingly bad sort of 20 something. But yeah, so that's how I got that. But um, sort of the cold emailing thing is always really difficult. I think my advice has always been to only contact people that you feel some kind of personal connection to their work,
Yeah.
because that gives you sort of something in common, because that the person who made whatever you're, whoever you're contacting, whatever they made, they felt something about it as well. So you can easily say, look, here is this thing that I enjoyed, that you made, and this is why I enjoyed it. And that's sort of a good opening, I always find. It's what I kind of did with Russell T Davies
Really?
many, many, many years ago. And that's how I ended up on the Sarah Jane
With a
Adventures.
CD?
I sent him a CD and a letter. This was in the days when you used to send CDs out. We do it all digitally now. But yeah, I sent him a CD and a letter, and I can't really remember exactly what the letter said, but it was about how much I liked his work, and that I thought I would be great on one of his shows. And luckily, he opened it and read it and listened to the CD. So
That's
the
really
rest is
good.
sort of
I
history.
really respect how proactive you are. What's been your experience getting work and moving between different shows as a composer?
Um, it's I think every career is not linear. People always think that they're going to have a career that starts at the bottom and goes up and up and up and up. And it really doesn't work like that. It's very sort of wobbly, peaks and troughs. It's hard work. It's really hard work, and I think the word you used, proactive, is a really good one. You do have to constantly be looking for new opportunities, trying to um, find new people to work with, people you've worked with before who might be doing a show that's come up or something, So I do a lot of cheeky emails to friends of mine who I know are working on something, going, "Oh, have you got a composer yet? That would be fun." That sort of thing. But when you're starting out, I think really targeting those again. If you hear about something that's being made that connects with you. Say you're an animal lover and there's an animal TV show being made. It's a really good thing to go, this is a thing that outside of music I care about. So that's a really good way. But for me, yeah, it's very up and down. It can be really tough. It's a tough industry, um, but it's a lot of fun. So
That's good. That's an important part. Um, and with fiction and non-fiction, how's making music and composing for those different?
that's a really good question. Um, I used to think it was very different um, when I first started out, and now I don't think there's a lot of difference at all because it's all storytelling. Um, there is obviously a slight difference in the way the types of music that you might write. Non-fiction stuff, documentaries and things like that tend to um, be a little more subtle, a little. There's a lot of writing sort of beds of music that have an emotion but don't get in the way because the narration on those is the important thing. The people watching need to really hear the words that are said. So you don't want to be writing anything that's going to get in the way. But then that's true of drama. The script, the script is the pinnacle of everything, and we're wanting that to come forwards first. So there's actually quite a lot of crossover in how to handle those sorts of things. A lot of the time, it depends on who you're working with as well, because sometimes people want a really strong musical identity, and sometimes people uh, want it to be less of a feature. So you kind of have to balance what
Mm.
you're doing.
That's really interesting. And I've heard you say before as well that like you can't be making certain people sound evil or something in the documentary. That you got to
Yeah.
be impartial in your scoring of them.
Yeah, documentaries, you've really got to try and, um, depending on the subject matter, I think you've really got to try and stay quite neutral.
Mm.
And musically, you want to add to the story, you want to add to the impact of the information that's being given. But um, you don't want to make a shark evil because sharks aren't evil. So you've got to, be careful about just how dark you go with the music and things like that. But it's the same it is the same in drama. If we look at Tiptoe, that's just come out that I did the music for, Clive in that we worked really, really hard, both the script, the acting, the music, everything, to make Clive more than just a monster. We didn't want him to be a monster, you know? So all of his music, although there's darkness to it, I was very careful to not push too far because you still want a human being in there at the center of it all, and to not caricature it, you
Yeah.
know? So yeah, it's a fun balance.
And I think you have such a strong musical identity with some of the stuff that you've done. And Traitors, like, it's not a show about music, but the music has become such a known thing. And I find that really interesting. And is it very different to scoring for actual images when you're writing themes for a reality show?
Yeah, when you're writing a theme tune for a show, it's a very different thing because you don't tend to see very much of it. You're not, they'll give you a few images, and with Traitors, they told me that Claudia was going to be presenting, and they showed me the logo and a few little bits of footage to get an idea. And then it was just a lot of references, like we like this piece of music or this film or the music from this, and then I had to kind of um, gather all of that information together and make something. And we worked very hard, uh, myself and the producers, Sarah and Sam, to sort of tweak it into what it became. But yeah, it's a very different thing, and it's very strange having a piece of your music be so well known.
Yeah.
It's I can't quite get used to it. It's very strange.
How do you feel about that?
I mean, it's really nice, and I'm very pleased that people really like the music. Um, because of course it's got a little piece of me in it, so it's almost like they like me, which is always a nice feeling.
Mm.
um but so it's a really nice thing that everyone enjoys it so much. Yeah, so I can't complain about it really.
And you talk about there being a bit of you in it. I know you have influences, you say, like you draw from sci-fi and from 80s music. What other influences or stylistic features do you think make a Sam Watts?
That's a really good question. I mean, I love melody, so you know, especially things like Traitors. I always start with a melody for things like that. Um, and probably my sense of harmony is the thing that is my real hook, and I get that my influences are really really wide. I was very lucky growing up with parents who had very eclectic musical tastes, and my brothers who also had very different sets of musical tastes. um, so one of my brothers was really into sort of club music and techno and all of that stuff. My other brother was really into heavy metal and Pantera and Metallica and those sorts of things. And my parents loved everything from Holst to Carly Simon. And so I had this huge wealth of music being played in the home. So I think lots and lots of stuff really influenced me. Um, Sort of a bit of a melting pot of musical things, and whenever anything uh, sort of makes me anything that makes sort of butterflies, when you're listening to music and you kind of almost have a physical reaction to it. I think I've taken a lot of those things on board. So a lot of the music that I'm writing, um, it's 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 obviously to serve the television show or the film or whatever you're writing for, but there is an aspect of me sort of sitting there going, do I like this? Does this make me feel something? Because if it makes me feel something, it's probably going to make someone else feel something.
I think that's part of the influence of the success of lots of the shows you've been part of is because it feels emotionally tense, and that's partly down to your music, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's sort of the goal, is that you want people to feel, you know, whatever emotion, whatever thing. You want people to connect. And I do think music really helps with that. And I think um, I set up a good feel for the show with Traitors, for instance, and the production company do an amazing job of the songs that they put in there and those sorts of things really really keep that feel going. They're so good at it, and I do think that is quite a big part of the Traitors' success, is the fact that the music that gets picked to go on the show works so well.
Yeah, I think so. And something that I wanted to ask you about is like when I've worked with music in a performance setting or a theatre setting, there's a lot about how do we work with the music, or can we have the action work against the music and
Mm.
contradict that? So is that something that ever appears in your work and something that you can do?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes you will get an edit in on a drama, let's say, and it's quite a rhythmic edit. The cuts feel quite rhythmic, and you can actually make the music go along with those and sort of enhance that. And sometimes it makes it feel like time is passing, or sometimes it does different things. And sometimes you want to completely ignore those edits. You want to completely ignore what's going on. One of the things that I learned quite early on in my career with when I was still I was doing things professionally but still learning, and I think we learn all the way through. We never stop learning. But was that sometimes if you've got a scene that's quite long but goes to lots of different places, there might be 5 or 6 locations or 10 different characters or whatever in that one scene. When I was young, my inclination was to have the music sort of move with those locations and do those things. And I learned very quickly, and it's actually one of Russell's big things, is that you're not scoring those individual sections, you're scoring the whole story. So the music you're writing is not about all of those individual parts, it's about how they all work together. So sometimes you completely ignore sort of the very specific things that are happening to concentrate on the larger story. And so you'll write a piece of music that doesn't necessarily match in with every aspect of what's on the screen, but for the overarching story works really well. So yeah, so we can do all sorts of stuff, playing with the picture, ignoring the picture. It's all different stuff depending on what you want.
And when you get a brief as well, I know you can't really talk about details of briefs for shows, um, but what kind of variety of information can you have? Because they'll probably have an idea of what they want. It's not just like you're writing music yourself.
Yeah, a lot of the time, there a brief will have a description of what the show is, um, and then depending on who is giving you the brief, they might have some references. So they'll give you other soundtracks or films or TV shows that they like the music for, that they think that sort of style would work. Sometimes they'll just give you um, a sort of a sentence about the music for this show needs to be, I don't know, uh James Bond meets the Neverending Story meets Heartstopper, and you've got to somehow work out what they mean by that. um and sometimes they'll literally tell you, we want melodic, emotive. They'll use words that sort of describe the music. So it's quite a mixed bag. There's a variation on how different people do it. But my job is basically to decode those briefs, to work out exactly what it is they want.
Do you ever give them something then that isn't what they think they want, but it's
Oh,
ultimately.
happens all the time, where there's two things that happen a lot. One is you'll write what you think they want, um, and it's not right, and you have to go back and start again, and do quite a few versions. Sometimes you write exactly what they think they want, and none of it's working. And every so I've had a few times in my career where they've asked, a production company has asked for a specific thing. I've delivered that as a sort of a rough to go, here we go, is this what we think? And everyone goes, oh, that's not quite right. Something's not right. And I'll always go, right, give me a day. I'll go away. I'll do something else. And I'll do something else that's more sort of not ignoring the brief, but kind of rather than trying to pull in all the strings, just sit and I'll go, what's my gut reaction when someone tells me what this show's going to be? What's that make me think of? And I'll write something and I'll send it back. And probably 8 times out of 10, they go, yes, that's the sound. So um, a lot of it is to do with communication. Music is very difficult to communicate, like especially for non-musical people. It can be very daunting to try and describe what you want music to sound like. So part of my job is to help find a language that we can talk about music. The other thing is that sometimes you can have an idea that you think is going to be really great. Like, I don't mind telling you, my first pass for the first episode of Tiptoe just got thrown out completely because I had gone down a route that didn't work for everyone. So we just went back to the drawing board and started again, and then ended up with something that was actually much better. But so that's a very common part of the process. Is sometimes you have to get it wrong to know what you definitely don't want, so that you can then get it right.
That's very interesting. Are there any other projects that you feel like were really standout moments in teaching you things or experiences as a composer?
I think Wizards versus Aliens was quite stand out for me because it was the first time I got an orchestra for myself for my own show.
Oh,
So we recorded with the BBC National Orchestra of Wales on that, and it was so thrilling to stand in front of 78 people who then play your music to you. It's the most thrilling thing. So um, that, and I have to just say that Traitors is standout because it's so big, and then I got the wonderful experiences of having my music at the BBC Proms last year, which was um, very, very special indeed. So yeah.
yeah, that's very impressive. You've done a lot of very big name shows, do you think?
Yeah, somehow. Yeah, it's just yeah. I guess so. Yeah, I've worked on some big things. Doctor Who, Traitors, Tiptoe. Um, it's interesting. I actually saw an interview with Russell where he said, he catches himself saying how lucky he is, and then has to think to himself, "Hang on, no, I've worked really hard," and it really resonated with me. Actually, I always say, "Oh yeah, I'm so lucky to have." Worked on all of these things. And I am very lucky to have worked on them, but uh, there was a lot of hard work involved in both doing the shows and getting the shows. So, yeah, it's a great position to have been in to be able to work on such great projects.
Yeah, but I think the success of the music in the work that you've done proves that it's not just luck, and you really have earned these positions that you've
Oh,
had.
thank you.
Um, how's your work on the shows that you do now compared to like what you were doing at Planet Earth? Like, what, what, how has it changed?
Good question. I still panic at the beginning of every project that I'm not going to be able to do it. I think a lot of creatives have that thing where they're like, "Oh, I don't know what to do now. I've got this thing and I don't know where to begin." Um, so that hasn't changed. I think I am. I think I'm a better composer than I was 20 something years ago when I did my first show. Um, which is a good thing because if I hadn't improved, I'd be worried. Um, and I just think that I come into them with much more knowledge now, obviously. And I think at the beginning I was still very much learning. I didn't do I worked for 3 years for George Fenton, and I watched him and I learned lots there, but I didn't do any formal training in writing for media. So my first few TV shows were I was sort of learning how to do it as I was doing the job. Now I do know how to do it. So I think now I can relax a little bit more knowing the technical stuff. I know how to make things fit to picture. I know about timing. I know about that. And then just concentrate a little bit more on the music. So I think the quality of my music has improved because I can spend more time focusing actually on the notes that I'm writing and not worrying about all of the other technical stuff that's going on.
Well, thank you so much for that. And do you have any advice to give out and anything that you want to be promoting as well?
Advice wise, I think for anyone who wants to work in the industry in well, actually for anyone at all, regardless of what they want to do, um, the piece of advice that I was given very early on was be nice. And I honestly think it's the best piece of advice. I always try to be kind and considerate and all the good things that people, you know, think of. And I think that's a large part of why I've been able to work on some of the things that I do. Because take Tiptoe, for instance, the nicest group of people you could possibly want to work with. It was such a warm, supportive, fun environment to work in because everyone respects everybody else and what everyone else does. Everyone gives each other the space to play and explore and do those things. So it makes for a really good place to work, which makes a better product in the end because everyone's, been able to do their thing. So I think that one little be nice actually leads to so much more than uh, than that one word would sort of imply. So my advice is really that. And then to plug, we've spoken about Tiptoe. That's kind of the thing that's on. I'm about to start another show that I can't talk about, and I have another show coming out later this year that I also can't talk about. But yeah, so watch this space. There is more stuff coming.
That's very exciting. You don't want to promote Planet Earth, Wizards versus Aliens.
I mean, just look at my IMDb and go and watch all of the shows I've worked on. They're great. Yeah,
Well, thank you so much.
you're very welcome.
So thank you so much again to Sam for agreeing to film this interview with me and have this chat, because Sam is very, very booked and busy on many different cool and big projects. So also being able to speak to someone so experienced in composing for TV was so fascinating. And I feel like since filming this, I have mentioned stuff that I've learned from this conversation with so many different people, and I found it really, really insightful. And I will be linking to so many different links about this chat, relating to this chat, previous interviews with Sam, Sam's IMDb. It will all be linked below, so make sure to go check that out. And also I will have some really cool interviews coming up very soon, so please do stay tuned as well, and thank you so much for watching.